Welcome to Mentoring Unlocked, hosted by Lindley, founder of Serendis Leadership and Mentor Key, the platform making mentoring impactful and elevating workplace development conversations. Maud is a renowned executive coach and leadership strategist with over 2 decades of experience, helping leaders unlock their full potential through adaptive leadership and meaningful mentoring. Tune in for personal mentoring stories, expert insights, practical tools, and bold conversations. Whether you're a mentor, mentee, or a culture shaper, there's something for you.
Pip Murphy, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's been long overdue, Pip, for you to come on this podcast. And I want to tell our audience, actually, that you are the one who introduced me to the very concept of podcasts. Very early days, it's like 10 years ago when you joined Serendis, you always have, like, on all sorts of topics, you always bring that fresh idea, that new thing that no one has heard about yet. But podcast was really this thing for me. It's not that it didn't exist or I didn't know about it, but you've introduced me to all sorts of podcasts that have made me love the concept of listening to people. And now I've found my new passion of hosting podcasts. So thank you.
Amazing.
And it's really long overdue to have
problem.
you on the
You're
podcast.
welcome.
You're a principal consultant at Serendis. You've been with us for 10 years now. You lead our leadership development and leadership program practice, which suits you so well because it's all these fresh ideas on the contemporary work and messy work of leadership and corporate culture. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast. You've had quite a varied career. You actually started in stockbroking in the early days, Pip. Do you remember those days?
Yes, long time ago.
But I guess a defining start of career for you was Bain, when you spent a few years there in management consulting and strategy roles. You also studied at Harvard University. You've completed an MPA there, Master of Public Administration. You have an MBA from AGSM in Australia. You were the head of strategy at Westpac. And then you saw the light and you joined a little Serendis boutique. So I want to start by asking you about the golden thread throughout your career. What's led you to where you are now? What have been the exhilarating moments or perhaps the not so fun moments throughout your career?
Well, thank you. And thank you for that lovely introduction. So it's a tough question, but, those early careers, I think I have had many careers, all were very traditional, analytical, and, professional type, areas. So, broking and consulting and financial services. At Westpac, I was in strategy and product roles. But I think I realized over time it was all about the people. And I remember we had presented a strategy to the board. There was a lot of people involved, the annual strategy review at Westpac, and there was a standing ovation. The board loved the strategy, and I was not as excited. I realized that I wanted to be working more directly with people and less with the numbers.
Yeah.
Less with, the frameworks and more with how to engage with people and help them on a journey. So that's when I moved into our world.
Yes.
And for the last 10 years, I haven't looked back.
The world of coaching. Now, Pip, when we think about the mentors who share their experiences, one thing resonates for me, which is at some point in time, a mentor will always tell me that something significant that they have delivered for their mentee is the ability to overcome a current conflict or a difficult situation or a sticking point where there were tensions and conflicts with their colleagues. And similarly, when I ask mentees, what do you get out of mentoring or what did this mentor deliver for you? There's always some kind of stories where the mentor has helped them come out of a tricky situation.
Yes.
So it's undoubtedly the world of work is complex and requires those difficult conversations to take place, and sometimes that leads to difficult relationships at work. You have done a significant amount of research recently into the topic of conflict at work, and I really want to explore this with you for our audience, who I'm sure will be, interested for their own purpose, but also we want to explore it through the lens of culture and how do we help someone either in a mentoring capacity or a friend or a leader capacity. How do we help people navigate conflict at work, disagreements at work in a constructive way?
Yes.
So let's start with the start. Tell us what you have identified. Why is this notion of disagreement, potential conflict, robust debate, why is this important today?
Well, if we really take a step up, the reality is we need diversification. We need diversity of thought. We know in Finance 101, one of the most powerful concepts is to diversify so that you lower your risk. However, we kind of have missed, in a lot of situations, the importance of diversification of thought. And so the problem is our human brains don't help us. They steer us in the wrong direction because we don't like conflict. We don't like it when people disagree with us or have a different point of view. It actually can be quite jarring. And that's the normal human reaction. So on one hand, we know in Finance 101, diversification lowers risk and helps your return. In the workplace, in our teams, in our families, in our life, we tend to shy away from that diversification because it's hard from a human brain perspective to take. So our job, or my job, was to work out how to work with the teams, our clients and our the people we work with, to shift their mindset around what someone disagreeing with them really means and how they can benefit from that and how that can make them better, not to be jarred.
Right. We're definitely going to dive into this in a moment because it's probably one of the most difficult challenges for humans, indeed.
Yes.
I love the way that you have framed diversification is a way to lower risks, and diversification of ideas is the way, I guess, that we make better decisions, that we lower our risk when we make decisions. I've got a sense, but please challenge me on this. Why do you think it's more important today than it was maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Oh, well, the problems we're solving are more complex. We're dealing with the change. We're dealing with a freight train of innovation and technology, and there's no job really in the corporate sector that I can think of that is not experiencing enormous velocity in the change. And we can't have all the answers. And so it's this mind shift from, being right to finding the right answer or a right answer. There's often not the right answer. And that requires quite a shift from our natural instincts.
In a way, you're already introducing that shift by calling it a diversification of ideas rather than a conflict of ideas,
of course, essentially. Of course. Yeah, the language, the word conflict scares us, many of us.
Yes. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is that actually what should be treated as a diversification of ideas is actually experienced sometimes, often. Tell us, is it often experienced as a conflict?
Well, it's often experienced as a criticism or that I'm being persecuted or that I have missed something or I've done something wrong. And all those things create the fight or flight response, defensiveness, and a lack of openness to that other point of view. So one of the most important things for us to really reap the rewards of diverse thinking is an openness. So we can have dialogue to actually improve our point of view, our collective point of view. But if we shut down, then we can't do that.
Yes, yes. So you're already sort of speeding us through the process here by saying if we manage to reframe it as it's not about whether I'm right, it's about a diversification of ideas that help us get to the best possible answer.
Or a good answer.
Yes.
There's no certainty, of course.
Yeah. So if we help individuals reframe this as this conversation is not a judgment of whether I'm right or whether I have done the right thing. It's actually an exploration of a good answer.
Yes.
That already helps reframe mindsets that will be more capable of navigating those conversations.
So let me give you an example.
Please.
So I've been working with some teams. They work in the investment space. And so there's some very capable, very clever and educated, experienced people working on different pieces of that puzzle. And they come to the committee meetings with a paper that they've, worked hard on. And they present their papers, and there's been an awareness that we want to challenge constructively. Mm-hmm. So there's been an invitation to the group, to the senior people, to the other juniors, to challenge the ideas that are being brought to the table. And so I'm calling this Constructive Challenge 1.0 because that is fantastic that they're inviting challenge. But unfortunately, the human instinct of the author is to feel criticized. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They've worked hard. They have put forward the best foot, but actually people are poking holes in their ideas or coming up with new ideas or other suggestions that they haven't yet thought of. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we have to get to Constructive Challenge 2.0 where the author realizes that it's my role to present some ideas to promote more thinking. Mm-hmm. That will be iterated, that others will build upon. Mm-hmm. But that's a big shift because we're taught, especially in our early careers, to come with answers, with solutions, not problems.
And to get it right.
Mm-hmm. And to come with a point of view, to build expertise.
Yes.
So actually, we're now telling people to do something or believe something slightly different.
Yes, that their role is not to come with the right answer, but to facilitate and to introduce, to almost prompt others to think broadly and facilitate a discussion as to what the best answer is.
Yes. And that is a very big mind shift.
Pip, is it the history of our, the fact that instinctively as humans we react negatively and we interpret that diversification of ideas as a threat to our expertise or credibility? Is this a learned behavior? Is this instinctive? I don't know if there is an answer to that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that it's pretty instinctive. We can thank our caveman and women days where our brains initially formed with its highest priority to detect threat. Okay. Because we needed to make sure we needed to stay alive.
Survive,
of course. So our fight or flight response, fight, flight, or fawn, is another version of that. So that's the idea that if you want to please, you can, is that a new?
Well, that's a new word. You can read in my eyes. Fawn. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more about
that. We might be the fighter, we might be the flighter, or we might be the fawner. So meaning, and this is very common as a response, a threat response in the modern world, because if we please the person who poses a threat to us, we will be safe.
Yes.
And actually in hierarchical environments, fawning is a very common threat response.
Yes.
So yes, I think pretty instinctive to answer your question. And yet cognitively we often know, and probably you would understand, Maud, and for anyone listening, sometimes our cognitive brain, our thinking brain is telling us one thing, but our emotional brain is telling us something else. Mm-hmm. So when we're fawning and we're maybe, saying things to please the people who are more senior in the room when we really know we don't believe or agree, and we have a different point of view, our emotional brain, which is protecting us, usually wins out.
Right.
So that's how it's why it's so hard to extract that diversity of thought, especially in hierarchical environments.
Because there's safety in groupthink, and that might be a threat response.
Exactly.
That's a very unique, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but that makes complete sense, that groupthink, that in-group behavior responds to that fear of not being credible or not being liked or not being seen as the expert.
Yes.
So there is so many things that push us towards the groupthink and the alignment.
Yes. So there's a lot working against us to be able to achieve the kind of diversification we can so easily achieve by our portfolio mix in our share portfolio.
Yes.
That we can't so easily achieve in the boardroom.
Yes. So I guess what we've just explored is the fawn response, the alignment response. We're all happy family and it's safer in that way. Not safer for the decisions we're making and for the organizations we represent, but safer for the group. Let's explore what happens when that conflict is creates an emotional response and we go into fight. When we respond negatively to that diversification of ideas because our emotional brain, as you said, has won and we respond negatively.
So I often talk about conflict as being cool or hot.
Okay. Yeah.
So actually we're disagreeing quite often. Most people in corporate environments are going into meetings and talking with their colleagues or their clients or their vendors and disagreeing. And often it's very logical and it stays cool. And that's actually usually a good thing. It means there's still an openness and a receptiveness to the other point of view. It's when it gets hot that things get difficult. We know in our bodies and in our brains when we're starting to feel frustrated or under attack or nervous about what's going on. So you asked the question, what happens when the conflict, sort of bubbles out? Well, I would like to suggest sometimes we see it and we see aggressive or passive-aggressive behavior. But sometimes it remains invisible under the surface. It's inside. It can present itself as rumination. So actually in the room, you might not see the conflict, but it's hot inside me.
Right.
It can present itself as that political manoeuvring where I'm talking to people outside the room, the meeting after the meeting. It can present itself as gossip. And, finger pointing. So
undermining
and white anting.
Right.
So any of those behaviors, if you go beneath the surface, are actually human protection mechanisms.
Coming from a threat response.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the threat response can lead to that fight, or the perception of threat at an emotional level leads to that fight response, which can take all sorts of forms, right? We have the open conflict in the room, but what you're actually really highlighting is that it can also take all sorts of other forms.
Yes, it's not just
the room.
Not just that traditional aggressive behavior.
Yes.
And in fact, in today's workplace, and you've aged me with my career history. When I started working in the 90s, there was much more shouting in the workplace, much more open aggression. I mean, especially on a trading floor, it was more acceptable. Right. Actually, to show your heat.
Right.
Now, we tend to be more professional.
So true. I never thought of that, but I completely see what you mean there.
Yeah, but it hasn't gone away.
Was it better?
Not sure about that. Maybe for another conversation.
Okay.
There were some things that would not be acceptable today.
Yes. Well, I guess in an environment where it's okay to be aggressive and to be openly shouting at each other, the loudest wins.
And, people shut down.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not sure it was particularly constructive.
Yeah. I mean, is it more constructive now? The white enting, the undermining, the sort of the politics playing outside of the room?
I mean, I think, again, we have a range of teams and organizations at different levels of capability who have learnt to respond in what I describe as more above the line kind of ways.
Okay, so I'd love to go there. I guess you've successfully sort of shown us that this is part of our life day to day, and this is required. Actually, that diversification of ideas, that conflict of ideas is required. Now, how can we, as leaders, navigate it in the best possible way so that actually the conflict is productive, so that it doesn't lead to, I guess I'll name it, but you'll talk about it much better than I am, so that it doesn't lead to a relational conflict, which is what happens when the threat response is not controlled or not managed effectively. Tell us more.
So I guess I would probably suggest 2 steps.
Yes.
The first one is to pause and diagnose the conflict. Try and work out what's going on. And in order to do that, or have a frame of reference around that, I lean on the work by Ron Heifetz at the Kennedy School.
You studied with him?
Alma mater.
Yes.
And I think it's a very powerful model where he talks about technical problems and adaptive problems and stepping back to work out what is the root cause of this heat. I mean, we can call it conflict, we can call it disagreement, but, all day long we're disagreeing, and maybe only once in the day or once in the week does it get hot. So it's when it gets hot
when your emotional brain takes over.
Yeah, and when there's something that is potentially threatening you.
Yeah. Okay.
It could be that you want to potentially take control of some of my work, or I might lose some decision rights, etc. Anything like that is a social threat.
So something is at risk for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Heifetz talks about technical challenges, and they are the ones that have a known answer. So we can usually, if we can find the source of the disagreement, whether it be we have different perspectives, different goals, different expectations, different timelines, something quite manageable, that if we can find it, we can cut it off at the pass and resolve it.
Okay.
But really, it's as simple as we're trying to work out the deadline for our project, and I'm got pressure to finish next week, and you have other things on your plate. So you've got different priorities, and we've got to work out how do we resolve this.
Yes. So if we understand each other better, we can find the right outcome.
And the way you get to that is to be open to the other's perspective. You tell me what's going on for you. Where are our common interests? Where are our differing interests? And we can work through that.
So that's a technical conflict.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
the adaptive.
The adaptive is more around when we have to adjust our assumptions, beliefs, values, perspectives. So when we really have to see the world potentially in a new way. So, we were talking earlier about the idea of criticism versus feedback and iteration, really changing the way we see feedback as something that's going to improve me rather than something that is criticizing me. So that would be an adaptive challenge for me, because I need to change my mindset.
Okay.
Which is much harder than just working out.
Changing the information that I have.
Exactly.
Okay. And Pip, if I go back to this notion of diversification of ideas to actually make the best possible decisions, what we're talking about here is an adaptive problem, an adaptive, it's a conflict of ideas that requires an adaptive shift.
Yeah, a shift for individuals. And because it is quite deep and challenging, we have to actually get to, have the real conversation.
Yes.
So this is where I see our role can be very valuable, because we can help teams go to the real work.
Yes.
Which is some people would have a different set of beliefs around, where they should spend their precious strategic dollars next year versus the other team members. And if we completely divide and stay in our positions rather than getting below those positions to what's making you believe that we should move in direction X versus direction Y. What is it might be a values-based conflict,
right?
For example.
So here we're talking about, let's imagine an executive team where the company is being disrupted and they actually need to make dramatic decisions for the organization's strategic direction. And those decisions are going to really impact the course of where we invest our money, where we train our people, where we position our products, etc. So there's a lot at stake. We want, for the benefit of this organization, the conversation to take place, the most robust debate to take place. But for that conversation to be productive, we need that adaptability, that adaptive response from the stakeholders. Now, tell us about how you help those stakeholders, those executive team members, come to the best place to make the best decision.
Yes. So the first step is that diagnosis. Are we dealing with a technical challenge here that we can manageably kind of work through? Or are we actually dealing with a really different set of beliefs and values around where we go in terms of this next step? If we are dealing, first of all, naming it.
Yeah.
That's the first step, diagnosing what is going on here. And that takes some conversation. It takes an openness. But most important, and this is step 2, and this is unfortunately the golden egg, it's helping people build and the team build self-awareness, which by definition is hard to do. It's like unconscious bias. We all think we're self-aware, but actually the research tells us that, many of us don't realize the impact we have on other people. So in order for that team to really make good decisions and get the diversity of thought, they have to, and I mentioned this idea, get above the line. So they have to realize that when they're under threat, when they're feeling hot, and pausing, and realizing this is not about Maud, that person. I'm going to, and I don't love the analogy, but it's very common, play the ball, not the person.
Yes.
So rather than me sit in my corner repeating my position and you sitting in your corner repeating your position.
Which often are, like we when we get to this point in time, the two stakeholders, like I know if I'm in that position of repeating my position and the person repeating their position, we can be aware of that moment, right? We can know this is happening. Maybe that's the signal to then go to what you're saying, which is
that awareness is step 2, because it's very easy to diagnose the situation and not see yourself as part of the system and the problem. So knowing that and being aware that I am actually repeating my position here and pausing and saying, okay, I might need a break because I'm hot. I'm actually heating up here. The conflict is heating up here.
As in the emotional brain is taking power.
So being aware when that is happening in yourself, because if it's happening in yourself, it's probably happening with the other people in the room. And 2, cooling yourself down so that you can be open and receptive to the other point of view. So having an awareness that they are doing their best given the perspective and the biases and the experience and the beliefs that they're bringing to the table.
Yes, okay. Wow. So it's actually forcing yourself to acknowledge the belief that this other person's bringing to the table.
Yeah.
But for that, you have to almost like put your own belief to the side.
Well, I don't know that you have to put your belief to the side, but you have to take a moment to check yourself.
Right, okay.
And if I could, I bring a very simple model or idea forward to help work to build that awareness. So it's called the drama triangle. Have you heard of
You told me about it, but I want our listeners to hear it.
And essentially, if you think there's a line, the line is fear. Below that line, we're driven by that fight or flight response.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Our brains, our emotional brains are taking over. And we tend to play one of three roles: the persecutor, the victim, or the rescuer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see this model, if you think about this model, you can see it everywhere. You can see it.
Everything.
You can see it in your home. You can see it, especially if you've got toddlers or teenagers around you, in any form. But essentially, the idea is that when that fight or flight response or fawn response takes hold of us, we tend to protect ourselves. And we tend to become victims, persecutors. Persecutors are people who are saying, well, I'm basically surrounded by idiots. I'm the only one who knows what I'm doing here. The victim has no agency, and the rescuer sorts everyone out. They're trying to relieve the system of conflict by doing it all. So what we want to do is move above the line. The fear is still there, but we know it's there. We're sort of walking side by side with that fear. So the persecutor can become the challenger, the victim, the creator. So working out, what do I have agency around? And the rescuer can become the coach. So the coach, rather than doing it all myself, I help coach others to build capability.
Yeah.
So that model, by the way, has been around for a long time, and it was originally created by Stephen Karpman in the, I think, early 70s as a psychotherapy tool, but it's been adapted in recent years by many coaches and authors to be used in a corporate environment.
Pip, when we are in that hot moment,
yes,
so it's pretty observable that I'm standing in my position, this other person's standing in their position. We're not compromising. We're at a standstill. We can't make a decision. Often we go to our boss to ask the CEO to make a decision. I see this very often. But obviously this is not ideal. We want the two executives or the three executives to be able to come to a joint decision that everyone can live with. So we're in this moment, this hot moment where we recognize there's a conflict. And so you're saying you need to cool down that heat, which I'm equating with let your cognitive brain take over, or actually force your cognitive brain to regain control from the emotional brain.
It's a nice way to say it.
And say, okay, what role am I playing here? What is leading me to sit in my position? How can I see a different perspective so that I look at the belief, the intention, the value sets that are driving the person who I disagree with?
Yes.
What else, and how have you seen teams resolve their conflict effectively when they apply this model?
Look, I mean, there's no silver bullet, but simply building a level of self-awareness to pause, often to stop the conversation if it's heated, to come back with a receptiveness, an openness, a curiosity. That is that's the golden dust that you want to sprinkle over this divisiveness so that there can be some common there can be dialogue, basically. Because if you're in your own corners, there's no dialogue. There's just hitting your position against a brick wall.
And we're playing the roles that you've identified before, the triangle. So we're continuously playing, perpetuate that role of persecutor or victim or fixer or rescuer.
Yes, rescuer, exactly.
So is it worthwhile to ask ourselves, which role am I playing?
Yes.
Can you give me some examples of some, emotional response? Like, what emotions am I likely to experience if I'm a persecutor, for example?
Oh, well, frustration. You're exasperated by this is a repeated offense. I keep telling them to do what they need to do. No one around here has the will or the capability. It's funny, you can sort of move quickly from persecutor to rescuer. I need to do it myself.
Ah, yes.
I'm the only one who can manage this. And actually, ironically, as you think more about the model, all of those three roles are actually forms of victims.
Okay.
You're being held hostage by yourself.
Right.
In if you're playing any of these three roles. So yes, to be able to identify what role you're playing and ask yourself why. So it's one thing to diagnose the system conflict. Is it technical? Is it adaptive? It's another thing to look inside yourself and diagnose, why am I playing that rescue role? Am I trying to please?
Right.
Am I the persecutor because I'm a perfectionist? Am I the victim because I'm avoiding?
Yeah.
So there might be a little bit of learning and growth you can take from knowing what role you play.
I want us to take an example. I see very often in an executive team, maybe the organization is heavily disrupted and they need to make a decision. I'm going to simplify it. They could go with product A and put all their resources and invest heavily into product A, or they actually instead stay with product B. And often, we see some representatives in the executive team of product A and some representatives of product B, and it's a really tough conversation to have. They disagree. Often, what happens is that they go to the CEO and let the CEO make the decision, which of course is it's not an optimal outcome because it's a burden of responsibility on the CEO, because actually that executive team is fractured as a result of not being able to resolve that decision together.
Yes.
So tell us, we have one product A advocate and one product B advocate. They've been at it for several weeks now. They recognize that they're camping each of them on their position.
Yeah. Okay. So if I come back to Ron Heifetz's work, he often talks about the natural inclination to build factions. And for them to be separate. So how do we, especially when the problems are adaptive? So if we think about the two steps, diagnosing. So the first step, which is a little bit easier because it's not looking at yourself. So first step is to step back and think, what is going on here? We've got two camps on opposite ends of the room, and these factions are becoming more and more divided. And this is not good. What is at the source of this? If it's a technical issue, great. Cut it off at the pass and deal with it. Very unlikely, though. It's much more likely adaptive. So we often ask, what's at risk for each party below the surface?
Right.
Is there a loss of control? Is there a reduction in someone or certain team's ability to perform if we make a decision around product B versus A? Is there another sort of challenge beneath the surface that is causing risk or threat
to the person,
to the parties? So you start by that diagnosis, but really, again, that golden egg is self-awareness. So once you're feeling the heat, now it is so hard to do when you're feeling hot yourself. So if you have a skill collectively to understand and be aware that the conversation's getting hot and the dialogue is losing steam, that you either pause, you get each party to, hopefully self-identify. And you can do this with a facilitator, or you can learn, the team can learn the skill to identify, what role am I playing here? Within that drama triangle. Am I playing the victim? Am I playing the persecutor or the rescuer? And what is underneath that? What's that risk for me that's causing me to allow that fight or flight response drive me?
That's amazing. And I mean, so many things come to mind for me, which is that the level of vulnerability that's required. I mean, are you recommending that each party actually puts on the table, this is what's at risk for me, or is it enough that they acknowledge it for themselves?
Look, it's a very unusual moment, especially when things are getting hot, for someone to show that level of vulnerability. The point at which I have found is incredibly powerful is when a senior person is prepared to say, you know what, I'm actually below the line right now.
Yes.
I think we need to pause. I need to process this conversation and come back when I'm in a better state. So it's owning their own heat.
Yes.
Or you might not use that language. You just might say, I'm feeling a bit hot in terms of this conversation and I need to cool down. So, you need to find a language that suits that culture and that environment that is acceptable, because it's unlikely that someone is going to go so deep to publicly announce their
this product B is at risk for them, for their credibility, having invested in product A for 10 years of their life. Yes.
But to be able to do that in your own mind would be brilliant.
Yes. And so what happens if, let's imagine we manage successfully to pause the conversation, we try to get above the line and we look at it in, face to face with our own fears and what's at risk for us. We're like, I have a personal vested interest in this outcome, and because it touches my credibility or the promises I've made to my people, or the deep belief that I have about this organization and what this organization stands for.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the above, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you then move away from that deep belief? Does it then help to make the best possible decision?
Look, I think the first step once you've cooled down is to do your best to have a receptive mindset and to be open to dialogue. So normalizing that the conflict is going to happen, but the real win is awareness and coming back to the table to have dialogue where I listen, I acknowledge, and I'm open. I'm not just listening to respond.
Yes.
I'm listening with a receptiveness and an openness. Yeah. And there's a lot of research that's been done to say the receptive mindset, or how open and receptive I am, will impact the quality of the result.
Yeah, amazing.
There's a great book that's just been released by Julia Minson from the Kennedy School as well, How to Disagree Better.
Yeah. And
she talks about receptiveness and the mindset of openness and receptiveness being the key to that that dialogue.
I think we're going to have to do part 2 for this podcast, Pip, because the more questions I ask, the more interesting things come out. And you look, from my own perspective, I think that organizations that will be successful in the near future are those who can overcome the natural below the line responses of their executives. And so how do we create a context at an executive team where we enable people to cool down and have the safety to examine their what's at risk for them?
Yeah.
Obviously maybe not always publicly, but at least in themselves, so that we elicit that capacity to listen to the other perspectives and make the best decisions possible.
Great summary.
How can organizations do that in practical terms? Think about CEOs, perhaps chief people officers often play that role of helping the executive team find the right culture. A couple of nuggets of advice from you on this.
Yeah, I think, Maud, it's a learned skill. And you've said it just then, but we are pushing against our natural human instincts. So this is an ongoing journey, and it's a learned skill. And really only in the last 10 years or so, organizations realizing the power of learning and capability building around some of these relational skills. So, obviously we work with teams to build those skills over time. So having a, facilitator in the room in the early days, building a language, a common language in the team is very important. And for there to be an permission to call it.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the heat. We can do better than this.
Yeah.
And, I guess, of course, ideally helping each
Yes.
team member build their self-awareness through that habit building.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'm looping back and thinking about our mentors and mentees listening in the room. Can you give 3 pieces of advice to a mentor helping a mentee in that situation?
Look, number 1, if someone's coming to you distressed and hot because they're in conflict with their manager or their peers or their, direct reports, help them step back, take a pause and diagnose. What's the root cause? Is there a technical solution, a known solution, or is there a conflict of values, assumptions, beliefs? Second, get them to look at themselves. What role are they playing? Now, in coaching, we often talk about coaching the ghost. So it's a term from Michael Bungay Steiner, who's a wonderful Australian coach who wrote The Coaching Habit. And I love it because sometimes when you're a mentor, the conversation keeps going back to the manager or the direct reports or the system. But actually, you've got to stay with the person. So help them build self-awareness. So don't coach the ghost. Don't coach the organization or the boss or the direct reports. Keep it about the person in front of you.
What role are you playing in this?
What role are you playing? Great question.
Yeah, brilliant. Pip Murphy, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been awesome to explore this topic, one of my favorite topics at the moment. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again in this podcast very soon.
Thanks for listening to Mentoring Unlocked. This podcast is powered by MentorKey, the platform designed to make mentoring impactful. If this episode unlocked inspiration within you, please follow, share, or leave us a review.